A routine bus ride becomes an unforgettable life lesson when a group of cocky teens pick the wrong target, a quiet Vietnam veteran with a past they can't begin to imagine. The bus hissed to a stop at the corner of Jefferson Avenue and Elmwood Street, its doors creaking open. A steady flow of tired passengers boarded, their faces weary from another long day. Among them was an elderly black man, his deliberate steps a testament to the years worn into his body. He carried a sturdy cane, its varnish smooth from years of use, and a small bag of groceries. Moving with purpose, he made his way to the back of the bus and settled into a seat. The cane rested against his knee as he gazed out the window, the evening sunlight casting a warm glow on his weathered face, highlighting deep lines that told stories of a life well lived. He sat quietly, unnoticed by most. Only a curious child or a kind stranger might offer a fleeting smile. The bus hummed back to life, its engine rumbling as it navigated the bustling streets. Inside, the usual mix of voices, shuffled feet, and phone notifications filled the space. But amidst it all, the man remained a figure of calm, watching the world outside with eyes that seemed to hold more stories than anyone could ever count. But not everyone saw the quiet dignity he carried. Not everyone understood the depth of his experience. And soon, that lack of understanding would lead to something unforgettable. The bus slowed for the next stop, and the atmosphere shifted. A group of teenagers, 4 in total, bounded up the steps, their laughter loud and carefree with an edge that hinted at trouble. Each one had a backpack slung over one shoulder, and their voices cut through the usual bus chatter like static. They lingered near the front, scanning for something, or someone, to entertain them. One boy, tall and wearing a backwards baseball cap, nudged his friend and pointed toward the elderly man at the back. "Yo, check him out," he said, his voice low but loud enough to make a few heads turn. The group exchanged smirks, and their laughter grew as they made their way down the aisle. Passengers shifted uncomfortably in their seats, some glancing at the old man, others pretending not to notice. The teens stopped just short of him, their movements exaggerated and full of swagger. "Hey, old man," the boy in the cap said, leaning on the seat in front of him. "You miss your stop at the retirement home or something?" The elderly man didn't respond. He kept his eyes fixed out the window, his hands resting on his cane as though it were his lifeline. His silence seemed only to egg the teens on. Another teen, a shorter boy with a hoodie pulled over his head, chimed in. "That cane for walking, or is it just holding you up?" he snorted, and the others burst into laughter. The passengers exchanged nervous glances but said nothing. A woman near the front shifted her bag closer to her chest. A man in a suit adjusted his tie, focusing intently on his phone. It seemed like the whole bus had silently agreed that staying out of it was the safest choice. But the teens weren't done. They edged closer, their voices growing louder, their jabs more pointed. "Bet he's got some cash on him," said the boy with the buzz cut. "What's in the bag, Grandpa? Cat food?" But just as their mocking reached its peak, the old man moved. For the first time, he lifted his head slightly, his calm demeanor unshaken. Something in his presence shifted, and even the teenagers hesitated for a moment. The hesitation passed, but the boy in the baseball cap leaned closer, his smirk widening. "What's the matter, Grandpa? Cat got your tongue," he sneered, tapping the old man's cane lightly with his sneaker. The others laughed, their voices bouncing off the bus walls like an annoying echo. But the elderly man's grip on the cane remained firm, and his gaze, unshaken, met the boys. The bus fell silent. Even the troublemakers were caught off guard. The boy in the hoodie leaned over, his bravado unchecked. "You deaf or something? Maybe he doesn't speak English," he joked, prompting another round of laughter. Still, the old man didn't respond. He shifted slightly in his seat, straightening his posture. His cane now rested firmly on the floor, and the subtle movement carried weight, a sense of purpose not lost on a few observant passengers. One of the teens, the smallest in the group, glanced nervously at the others. "Maybe we should chill," he muttered, but his suggestion was ignored. "You got a problem, old man," the boy in the cap pressed, his voice tinged with mock irritation. "We're just trying to have some fun. Lighten up." For the first time, the elderly man spoke. His voice was low but firm enough to cut through the noise. "Do you boys always find fun in bothering strangers?" The bus went quiet. Even the teens were thrown off by the unexpected question. It wasn't delivered with anger or sarcasm, but with a clarity that demanded an answer. The boy in the hoodie tried to regain control, shooting back. "What's it to you?" The old man tilted his head slightly, his eyes unwavering. "Because I've met young men like you before," he said. "Different time, different place." They didn't laugh as much when they found out what real fear feels like. The air grew thick, and the teens exchanged uncertain glances, their confidence visibly shaken. But just as it seemed the tide might turn, the boy in the cap scoffed, unwilling to back down. "What, you're going to scare us with your cane?" he said, his voice rising in an attempt to regain control. The old man took a deep breath, his eyes sweeping over the group. "You think this cane is what I lean on?" he asked, his voice calm but carrying undeniable weight. "No, boys. This cane is just what holds me up. What keeps me standing is something much stronger." The boy in the cap scoffed again, but his laugh was hollow, lacking the confidence it had before. "Yeah. What's that?" he challenged, though a tremor in his voice betrayed him. The old man's gaze sharpened as he continued. "When I was your age, I carried something much heavier than a cane. I carried a rifle through jungles, half a world away. I was 19, barely older than you." "Vietnam," he said, the word hanging in the air like a weight. The bus went still, and the passengers fell silent. "Back then, we didn't have time for jokes like yours. We had to grow up fast, too fast. Some of us didn't come home at all. And those of us who did," he paused, tightening his grip on the cane. "We carried more than our gear. We carried scars, some you can see, most you can't." The smallest teen shifted uncomfortably, his gaze dropping to the floor. Even the boy in the hoodie lost his smirk, his face showing real unease. "Let me tell you about fear," the old man said, leaning slightly forward. "It's not being mocked on a bus or standing in front of someone with a cane. It's hearing the snap of a twig behind you and not knowing if it's a soldier or a trap. It's watching your friend fall beside you, knowing you can't stop to help." His voice faltered for a moment, but then regained its strength. "And you know what else I carried?" he asked, locking eyes with the boy in the cap. "Discipline. Respect. And the understanding that real strength isn't about tearing others down. It's about knowing when to stand tall and when to sit quietly." The passengers were transfixed, some wiping away tears, others staring out the window as if pretending they hadn't heard. The tension in the air was palpable, heavier than before. "We didn't mean anything by it," the boy in the hoodie mumbled, his voice barely audible, full of regret. The old man nodded slightly, his demeanor softening just enough. "I know you didn't. But words have weight, boys. And you never know what someone's carrying." Before the teens could respond, the bus slowed for another stop. The elderly man leaned back in his seat, his cane resting once more against his knee. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was filled with reflection, the kind that lingers long after the moment has passed. At the next stop, the group of teenagers exited, their bravado and laughter left behind. As the bus doors closed, the old man fixed his gaze on the world outside. The silence on the bus wasn't tense anymore, it was thoughtful, almost reverent. The passengers murmured to each other, sharing stories of family members who had served, or simply expressing admiration for the man's quiet strength. As the bus neared its final stops, the atmosphere had transformed. What had once been tension and avoidance had shifted into collective reflection. A young woman across from the elderly man broke the silence. "Thank you for what you did, for what you've been through," she said softly. Her voice carried the gratitude of those too shy to speak. The old man nodded, his expression kind but restrained. "I did what I had to," he replied. "That's all any of us can do. But what matters is what you do now, with the life you have and the chances you're given." The words seemed to hang in the air, drawing everyone into their quiet gravity. The young woman smiled faintly before turning back to the window. As the bus slowed at the corner of Ashland Avenue, the elderly man rose from his seat, his cane steadying him. Some passengers moved instinctively to make room for him. Before stepping off, he paused and looked around at the faces surrounding him. "Be kind to each other," he said gently. "You never know the battle someone's fighting." With that, he stepped off the bus, the doors closing behind him. The passengers sat in silence for a moment, before the bus hummed back to life, pulling away. For the rest of their ride, the passengers carried more than just their belongings, they carried a story. A reminder of strength, humility, and respect. And maybe, just maybe, the teenagers walking home from the bus stop would carry that lesson with them, too, letting it shape how they approach the world. This story is a reminder of the quiet dignity and strength that often go unnoticed. Let's work toward building a world where kindness and understanding are the norm, not the exception. If this story resonates with you, share it. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that inspire, challenge, and remind us of what truly matters.